Due to the graphic nature of this program, listener discretion is advised.
Hey man, this is Kevin Smith, the guy who makes all those unlistenable podcasts over at smodcast.com, and you're listening to the Two Strangers, One Podcast. This is podcasting.
You're listening to Two Strangers, One Podcast. Go to iTunes now and subscribe. For Android users, we are available on the Stitcher app for Google.
Well, hello and welcome to Two Strangers, One Podcast. I'm Chris, and coming to you, this is Two Strangers, One Podcast 2.0. We're coming hard, we're coming strong, we're coming at you with a gentleman that is very near and dear to my heart. How many human beings can honestly say that they killed Superman? He was part of an extended 8-year run with the Man of Steel comic books, basically 85 issues in a row. Was very involved with the death of Superman back in 1993, and also the return of Superman. And anyone who's listened to the show will know that I have a special place in my heart for the DC character Steel. And, this gentleman helped co-create it. I give to you, Jon, and I hope forgive me if I don't slaughter your name, Jon Bogdanove.
Very, very close. The mnemonic here is, it's like, do you remember a director named Peter Bogdanovich back in the 70s? Yes. It's just like Peter Bogdanovich, except you scratch the itch. Oh.
Bogdanove.
The emphasis is on the middle syllable.
Gotcha.
So Bogdanov. But that's okay. I answer to anything else.
So basically, I'm a fan on your Facebook page. I'm a fan on your Twitter. You had just recently announced that you are starting a Kickstarter for your own creator. Creator-driven, independent comic.
Independent, creator-owned, creator-driven.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yes, legacy project, labor of love, dream project, I guess.
It's called Strongman, and
it's called Strongman.
And it takes place basically in the turn of the century, 1800s into the 1900s?
Well, let me see if I can generate an elevator pitch for anybody who hasn't been carpet bombed by my social media actions in the last couple of days. Strongman is, he's the story of a strongman, a circus strongman in the early years of the 20th century, who, with his sort of chosen family, his team of fellow sideshow freaks and performers, form a sort of prototypical superhero group in the age just before superheroes. So the bulk of the action happens pre-1938, so presumably pre the invention of Superman, and but there's a lot in common with. It's almost like a stepping stone between pulp heroes and comic book superheroes. Mm-hmm. In that, circus people show folk were sort of outcasts in society back in the early 20th century and before. And certainly, if you're a dwarf or a wolf girl or some sort of sideshow act, you're even more likely to be an outcast. So in that way, these people are like the X-Men because they're outcasts of society, but they have special powers, abilities, and attributes that make it possible for them to do the impossible. And so they live and work and travel with the Strange Brothers Circus, which has a seemingly mystical knack of going wherever it's needed. So whether it's the big city or a Coney Island boardwalk or a small Midwestern town somewhere, the circus always seems to come to town when something in that town needs doing. And they face all sorts of challenges drawn mostly from pulp situations, but so they'll face evils of human nature, like rum runners and gangsters and lynch mobs and all sorts of human evils. But there's also sort of fairy tale mystical element that fans of H.P. Lovecraft and Russo-Finnish fairy tales will find actually an oddly fitting mix.
Mm-hmm. I was from the Kickstarter video. I was definitely intrigued because you said, kind of like there was crime noir, the H.P. Lovecraft, definitely. I love that kind of, pulpy kind of feel that it has to it. That from the sketches that we've seen, definitely a cast of characters: the fat lady, a wolf girl, of course the strongman himself. Who else am I missing?
Well, our lineup includes, besides, the stars is Bronny. So Bronislav Bellman is a vintage strongman in the classic style of Adam Greenstein or Louis Cyr, and that's essentially, and his abilities, generally speaking, reflect and hopefully do honor toward the actual feats of real-life strongmen. So many people today are amazed by what these old-time athletes actually were able to do. Some of their feats seem impossible and yet are well and scientifically documented. But some of those feats seem impossible even today, bordering on the supernatural. So but he's also gifted with sort of a reverse of a trait of Superman's. You know how Superman is vulnerable to magic. Mm-hmm. Braun's secret ability, and this has roots in some very early experiences of his as a child in the forests of Russia after his family and village were destroyed by Cossacks. He had some mystical adventures in the forests of Russia, and it left him with actually the ability to be stronger in the face of magic. So it makes him a formidable foe for human foes, but it makes him really the nemesis of otherworldly evil. So Braun is our star, and at his side are first of all, there perhaps our breakaway star. Well, they could all be breakaway stars. It depends on who we're writing at the time. But there's Wolf Girl, who is a little quinceañera princess of a respected Mexican family who all have the
werewolf
name of the
disease.
condition escapes me. Hypertrichiosis. But unlike the rest of her family, who is very, very concerned with overcoming the stigma of their condition and being treated like human beings and acting in a dignified manner, she wants none of that. She wants very much to embrace her wild side and be the wolf that she looks like. So she becomes an acrobat and is sort of like our little 15-year-old pint-sized Wolverine of the group. There's also Raleigh, who is a dwarf, a southern gentleman from the Louisiana Bayou, and he is a jack of all trades and master of all trades. But he's an expert knife handler, an expert swordsman, an expert riverboat gambler, and a magician. And he's a dramatic and gifted orator and all around dapper guy. After him, there is Fire Angel. Luminitza is a North African gypsy who is a fire handler, and her powers are mysterious. her mastery over her act is borders on the unbelievable. Next in line, perhaps my current favorite is Bella the Ball, who is our circus fat lady, but she's also Ron's sparring partner. Her father was a sumo wrestler, and she who wanted boys, and she is she grew up trying to please Dad, even though at heart she is a petite flower and super femme. So she's sort of our sex pot, actually, even though she's a good 8 feet tall. But anyway, Bella the Ball is our circus fat lady, and I think she's a real close pal of Bronze and his training partner. And last but not least is probably Bronze's best friend, is Wolcott. Wolcott is a woolly mammoth from the Cenozoic age who Bron rescues in one of our stories when this is going to sound out of context. It sounds a little weird. He gets thrown back into time by a weather witch on the Twister, and rescues Wolcott from hungry cavemen who have just killed his mother, and they form a bond beyond Tarzan and Tandoor's. They are really best friends. Wolcott is extremely smart, and so smart that he finds a way to come back to the present with his pal Strongman. So we certainly are in love with this gang. The whole project is incredibly sort of character driven and character centric, and we hope that the experience for readers will be similar to the experience of us creating it, in that we just like spending time in this world with these characters specifically. The nicest thing about coming into work every day is that in my imagination I get to go back to the Strange Brothers Circus and hang out with a group of people who have become extremely real to us in a very, very short time, as I hope they will to everybody who reads them.
Yeah, and it being part of a traveling circus sideshow deal, I love the idea that they're traveling, and it seems that everybody has like their own little, their power to help fight bad guys.
Yes, it fits the classic mold of great superhero teams, from Fantastic Four through the Ghostbusters, the Enterprise Bridge team. Everybody has a function in the team, and their powers and abilities are hyperbolic superhero metaphors for their character traits and real issues of the human condition. So in that way, they really feel like a solid team to work with dramatically, as well as being just a fun family to spend time with.
When you were growing up, did you go see the circus? Is this from any kind of real life experience? Did you go out to Coney Island? Because that's the first place that pops in my head. I'm a New York City boy, born and raised. So whenever when I think of that world, I think of Coney Island. Was that part of your childhood at all?
Coney Island has actually played a huge role in this for me, in that the Coney Island I know, of course, is the dilapidated remains of its 20th century heyday. So the sort of the Coney Island I fell in love with is the one of the sort of rundown boardwalk and Ruby's Bar. And hang on just one second.
Thank Chris for me for the great interview. I gotta head home for a bit. I'll see you in a little while.
All right, buddy. Will do. That was co-creator Jon Bogdanove leaving the building. Sorry for the interruption. I know that the renovation of Coney Island is a controversial issue for New Yorkers, and I'm not commenting on that, but there is a certain magic to old amusement parks in that they can be great family entertainment and are bright, happy places by day, but they are also wicked scary at night, and even during the day. There's something funky and weird and strange and slightly dangerous about them. Mm-hmm. And I find that that combination of fun family entertainment with dark mysteries behind it very compelling.
In the day.
You're right. We one of the things that Cal hits all the time that Chris came up with is that a clown in the daytime is a wonderful thing for kids. A clown at night is scary. Run. and that I love that combination of what's on the surface and what's under the surface. And we play with that on a lot of levels because sometimes ugly people or strange people are really wonderful people underneath, and sometimes beautiful people really conceal horrible otherworldly evil. So, and very human evil too. So we play a lot with the misdirection of appearances, which is certainly something that any magician, it's a totally Barnum thing to do. But it's a sort of a theme that's...
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
This episode of Two Strangers, One Podcast is brought to you by Comics Etc., 1115 East Main and North Goodman at the Hungerford Building, door number 8 in downtown Rochester, New York. Find out more information at comicsetc.biz or like them on Facebook at facebook.com/comicsetc1.
Capturing the love the two of you share on your wedding day. Simply Perfect Weddings creates the stories you'll tell for a lifetime. Simply Perfect Weddings performs ceremonies for all couples. No restrictions, no limitations. Simply Perfect Weddings would be honored to officiate and coordinate an unforgettable ceremony full of love, life, and laughter. And since you can't have a wedding without popping the question, Simply Perfect Weddings creates incredible marriage proposals too. For a free consultation, call 415-1817 or RochesterPerfectWeddings.com.
Hello?
Yes.
We're back.
I'm still here.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
That was Spencer Beck in New York. Do you know him?
That's the co-creator.
No, Spencer Beck is a dealer of original comic art in New York, and he's actually a wonderful guy. He's a scrupulously honest art dealer. And he's a good guy to buy art from. I'm just saying to the audience. Spencer Beck, the Artist's Choice, New York. Available on the web. He's actually he specializes in older artists' original pages. So if you're interested in like vintage Marvel and vintage DC actual boards, continuity boards. He's a really good guy to see because he's had a long career of good relationships with the old timers, and he's the place to go for that stuff. Anyway, little plug. What were we talking about, Chris?
We were talking about the sinisterness of the carnivals after night, after dark, amusement parks and clowns, and once the sun goes down, that what was once a happy place is now it's scary but magical at the same time. Kind of like anything can happen.
Yes, and this is where it ties in with fairy tales because. Most people in this country, our introduction to fairy tales is through Disney, and Walt was not a huge fan of amusement parks, because of the scary factor, and he, I think, must have felt similarly about fairy tales because, and don't get me wrong, I love all Disney movies. I really do. I'm a huge fan of all the Disney treatments of fairy tales, but I am also a fan of the darker, older folktale versions of those stories and the roots of those stories. And a lot of what we're doing in Strongman is drawn from sort of the weirdly skewed Russian and Slavic and Nordic versions of familiar fairy tale motifs. Mm-hmm. So, and in that world, what on the surface seems like a happy fairy tale often contains some pretty dark and scary stuff. So that sort of ties in with the antique circus vibe as well. But the central reason for placing this in a circus, for me, is the fact that really without the circus there would not be superheroes as we know them. Basically because Superman, the prototype superhero, whose costume really is the basis for every superhero that has come since, his costume is based on circus outfits of aerialists and strongmen, trapeze artists, who all performed in tights, who, for decency's sake in the Victorian age, wore little pants on the outside over their tights, just as extra politeness around the groin region. Also, if you think of Superman's original costume, the Greek style lace-up boots were precisely taken from strongmen of the time, who wore that as an allusion to Greek sculpture. And of course, aerialists would ascend the ladder high above the crowd, and before launching themselves in the air, would may or may not remove their capes. So the capes, tights, pants on the outside, and boots are all directly borrowed from circus garb, and were the obvious inspiration for the design of the original superhero, and then by extension, virtually all superheroes who have come since. So, superheroes and comics owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to the circus, and it seemed like a natural connection to explore.
I never, I'm learning something now. It's, and then of course performing the feats of, lifting heavy things and having like a power that's underlying.
Yes. Doing things that normal rubes in the audience couldn't possibly do. Bending bars and lifting great weights, or flying on the trapeze, or handling fire, or dealing with wild animals. These are things that were outside the ability of normal humans. And visually, the circus outfit was part of the show because it basically said, "This is not your average human being." It was kind of a genius inspiration, actually, of Joe Shuster, who is, I think, not sufficiently credited for creating the memes that he created. In Superman, he distilled so much of what is our collective unconscious, or our common zeitgeist, in ways that are sort of perceptual triggers, that the longer I'm in this field, and the more I play with superheroes, and the more I've thought about Superman, the more impressed I am by how this kid from Cleveland, who was a teenager when he invented Superman, could really have put together and distilled so much of our cultural identity into these symbols with just a few lines. So that's actually part of the appeal of making this a period piece. because it's nice to go back to the roots of your genre and the roots of your inspiration.
And a time before big time technology and space travel, where like magic was very real and very much a part of people's lives, where now it's kind of a little bit diminished because there's whistleblowers and there's YouTube and there's people giving up the secrets. So, is it a different time where, magic was very real and curses were real and...
Well, I mean, yes, and there are dramatic possibilities to working in period, and one of them is that you get to exploit what we didn't know about the world back then. There's an old adage in comics that magic is just science and technology we don't understand yet. But so you can look at it any way you want to. One of the reasons I think that H.P. Lovecraft is so popular these days, and one of the reasons certainly that I have always loved H.P. is that he sort of straddles the two worlds. Here he was, a classic fantasist on the cusp of at the start really of the 20th century, having to, for the very first time, reconcile science and magic, having to reconcile the ineffable with the new language of physics and astronomy, and he bravely did it in a way that produced works of delicious Gothic horror and mystery that were still grounded, at least nominally, in a world of science. So there were other dimensions, and there were other planets, and there were other worlds, and there were alien beings who, in H.P. Lovecraft's stories, function the way that demons do. So, without just falling on old chest, it's the action of a demon. No, it's Yog-Sothoth, an ancient elder god who is really a super powerful alien being whose powers are beyond our ken, and if you try to know them, you go mad. And that is a wonderful place to play, is on the cusp between science and magic. And the dawn of the 20th century, when electric power was new, when telephones were rare, when train travel was a miracle of the age, that is a fascinating time to play with, because it was for practical industrial technologies the equivalent of the changes in information technology that we've experienced in our age. It was a period of tremendous cultural change. And so it's an exciting playground.
In the time of, because I love the words that you use on your the Kickstarter. The time of Teddy Roosevelt and Nikola Tesla, and it's like
yes.
What's the word I'm looking for? The individualism, rugged individualism, and Tesla, and that just as the other day they were celebrating his what would have been his birthday, and and also like H.P. Lovecraft, stuff that still strikes a chord, strikes a resonance. My favorite line from Call of Cthulhu, or Cthulhu, however you want to pronounce it, was buildings. The geometry of the buildings were of like impossible angles, and that
impossible geometry.
And it just that always gets my mind going.
Well, I mean, and I, yes, of course, and you read that stuff when you're 14 or whatever, and you think, what could that possibly be? I can't picture impossible geometry because you can't picture it. But it's interesting because it certainly is a way of describing quantum physics. And I will say that studying quantum physics would drive me mad. So maybe HP wasn't that far off. That stuff is pretty boggling.
don't want to say just recently, about last year I learned the concept of, the Tesseract, where, a square is in 2 dimensions, a cube is in 3 dimensions, and a Tesseract is in 4 dimensions, and that the evolution from a square to a cube is boggling enough as it is. I don't know how another dimension, definitely gets your head spinning in that weird direction. It's kind of like right before you go to bed. It's always those things that kind of haunt what's going on, kind of like make your eyes pop back open.
Oh, absolutely. When I was in 3rd grade, I had this amazing math teacher, actually, who, really worked hard to get me to learn my basic facts tables. She was a wonderful teacher, but one of the things that she did for us was she read us A Wrinkle in Time by Marion Lingle. Did you read that growing up?
Honestly, I never got a chance to read it.
It's a prototypical science fiction novel for young people, and it introduced me to the concept of the Tesseract. And it's really a classic. It's come out in a graphic novel recently. I know this because I saw it win an Eisner Award the other night. But it's Lingle wrote a whole series of books with these characters, and some are better than others. But the first one is a legit classic. So if your childhood did not include A Wrinkle in Time, I really recommend that as a book to go back and pick up, because it's got some weird, great stuff in it, and it introduced to me, some concepts that now we deal with quite comfortably and regularly in science fiction and comic books. Like H.P. Lovecraft, the idea of extra-dimensional elder gods and aliens who are so powerful that they seem like gods or magic creatures to us, is now a very common, almost cliche idea in genre fiction, comics, television, fandom of all sorts. But it was brand new when H.P. invented it. And that's true of A Wrinkle in Time too. The concept of the Tesseract and traveling by folding space-time was introduced to me, at least, by Madeleine L'Engle in A Wrinkle in Time. And of course now, I'm perfectly happy bouncing around in the TARDIS all timey-wimey, but I'm pretty sure A Wrinkle in Time happened before the Doctor first stole the TARDIS.
You mentioned going to the Eisner Awards. You were at ComicCon, San Diego Comic-Con?
Oh yes, indeed. Was I ever?
And
did you go to Comic-Con this year?
Oh no. Well, I'm on the East Coast. I've only been to Big Apple Comic-Con and there's a small independent one called RockCon, because I'm originally from New York City, but right now I'm based out of Rochester, New York, 6 hours north of New York City. And there's like one, I don't want to say major convention, but it's called RockCon. But I've been to the Big Apple Comic-Cons, down in New York City. But my dream is to go to San Diego. Like one day.
Well, you should definitely give it a try. There's nothing like it. It's as different from, I really do love the small cons that are the so-called small cons that are actually still predominantly about comics. But it's almost apples and oranges with Comic-Con, because comics are still in there somewhere. You can find a lot of comics in there, but it's not really about comics. It's about genre entertainment of all sorts, and it's in a large part been taken over by Hollywood. But the most remarkable thing about Comic-Con is that it is just so huge, so huge, so many people in costumes. What it is a community where normal people can wear spandex comfortably in public. It's a sociological phenomenon, because you realize that this 150,000 people group even though their interests span everything from, Games of Thrones, Doctor Who, Walking Dead, comic books, sci-fi movies, whatever it is out there, they're all still sort of part of your tribe. And it's kind of amazing. So you can hang out with the comics people, or you can plunge into the madness that is everything at ComicCon. But it's a phenomenal sociological phenomenon. Really is what it is. It's just amazing, exhausting. Complete madness. You don't sleep much. But quite an experience. I recommend it. I hope you get out there.
Oh, definitely. Nowadays, maybe not to the point where, basically there's cell phones, there's cameras, there's so much documentation going on that, hopefully all this stuff will still exist, 200 years from now. They're going to look at, this beginning cultural phenomenon, Comic-Con. I think scientists are going to study it and and try to figure out what exactly was going on. What would get 300 people dressed up like stormtroopers. And I, as a fanboy, as a self-professed fanboy, when you see someone in costume, there's almost like an innocence there. It's like when you go, going to, Disney World and you see, Mickey Mouse. I mean, your first instinct is to almost say, "Hey, Mickey Mouse." Of course it's a guy in a costume or a girl in a costume or whatever the deal is. But there's kind of like an acknowledgement, and like for a moment it's very real in your heart. It's very real, and like that's Mickey Mouse, or that's there's Spider-Man, or there's Batman, and there's Superman.
we saw this wonderful image at Comic-Con this year. I'll never forget. I think we took a picture of it and Instagrammed it. But Spider-Man. This is at the hotel, at the Marriott, at the pool. Spider-Man has a towel wrapped around his waist, and he's tentatively sticking his foot into the water. Because, he really wants to go swimming, but, spiders don't get along that well with water. They end up, with their feet waggling in the air on their backs, and they can't get out of the tub by themselves, and so big bathtubs are kind of an anathema to spiders. But Spidey really wanted to go swimming. So we have this great shot of Spider-Man tentatively dipping his toe into the water. Yeah, full costume, man, the whole thing. It was somehow emblematic to me of Comic-Con. Also, I had a lovely conversation with a lovely barbarian woman on her cell phone. It's the only place in the world where you can be walking down a hallway and there is a half-naked barbarian woman with a battle axe and leather armor. Happily texting.
And
it's so cool.
By today or tomorrow, she's back in the office, or she's
she's back in the control tower landing planes.
And it's
she's back in the control tower landing planes, or she's she's an anesthesiologist in the cardiac ward or whatever. That's what she's doing now. I don't know. Anyway, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I had asked my roommate, who's she's a bit of a seamstress. We had just moved in together, and I was kind of like, do you think you could help me put my cape together? Like, could you? It's like I went and I bought the material, and long story short, I'm going to be the Boy Wonder, only because it's the only thing I can put together right now that I actually have like all the materials for. But
sure.
So but the look on her face when I come out with the the yellow material for the cape, and I'm like, you think you could help me sew the edges on this? She looks at me, like I had 10 heads, but I said, hey, but she's known me for a while. Going to Comic-Con, gentlemen of your caliber, I'm pretty sure there's a certain reverence that the fans have towards you. Do you get a chance to see, other than the obvious madness, are there any kind of like even crazier than usual Comic-Con stories?
Oh, crazier than usual. That's the short answer to that is no, because it's all pretty crazy, man. Wow. The thing is, so much is going on at all times. You'd have to make subcategories to award craziest, you know. So is it, was it the club music pounding out of the pirate boat that the Assassin's Creed people were using, or is it the acres of kids, actually grown adults too, sleeping rough on the promenade in their sleeping bags out in the open air all night to stand on line to see Matt Smith or something in the morning? Is it the giant Lego or balloon characters? Is it all the phenomenal costumes where it's clearly evident that someone has spent tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours creating literally a Hollywood worthy work of art costume? Is it queuing up at the bathroom and looking over and realizing that one of your all-time idols is standing right next to you, and you're both trying nervously not to look at each other because you're peeing? It's just probably the best thing is when you get to meet somebody you've always admired, like Sergio Aragonés, or I got to meet Todd Klein this trip, who's such a magnificent letterer. That for me was kind of a big deal. Dennis Cowan was there, so it was good to see him again. There was a period in my life where I boldly swiped from him, or at least imitated his line style for a while on Superman. Maybe the best thing for me, maybe my best memory, and I wouldn't say it's the craziest Comic-Con moment, probably my best memory from this Comic-Con is just reuniting with the Death of Superman gang. Wow. Mike Carlin was there, and Jerry Ordway, and Dan Jurgens, and Louise Simonson, Marv Wolfman, and George Perez, and we were all at the con together. We had a panel together where Dan and I each got Inkpot Awards, which was nice. But we had a panel that Paul Levitz moderated, and that was cool. But the best parts were just hanging out together. We did some charity signings here and there, and just seeing those guys after all this time made me wicked sentimental.
The Death of Superman is such a cultural, Superman's been around for 75 years. He's going to be around for hundreds of thousands, however, as long as our society and our culture is being recorded. Superman has such a stamp, and, the death of Superman is such a curveball. It's such a impact that you're part of this cultural shift, for the lack of a better term. People are going to be talking about 300 years from now. There's going to be, because as characters evolve, and of course Bronze Age and Golden Age, and who knows whatever the next age is going to be, Silicone Age or something like that.
The new 52. That's the new age. Is the new 52.
It's
The thing is, I think, it occurred to me when I was, Mike Carlin and his wife Janice took the Death of Superman gang out to dinner Sunday night, and as I was looking around the table at these familiar, kind of beloved, graying faces, I found myself thinking, well, a couple things. Holy cow, 20 years passed fast. But the rest of me was thinking, maybe the lasting effect, maybe the real meaning of that whole Death of Superman story, is that it sort of woke people up and reminded them that Superman was important to them. It's an odd thing because, part of the reason we decided to kill him, well, the obvious reason is, of course, the old story that we were heading toward a marriage between Lois and Clark, and the TV show Lois and Clark was coming on the air, and so that scuttled our plans because they couldn't be married in the comics and not married on the TV. So 5 days of summit work was thrown out, and we had to come up with something fast. And Jerry said, "Well, let's kill him." But the real story for us was the Funeral for a Friend and the Reign of the Supermen, because that's where we got to discuss, each of us in our own way, our feelings about Superman and his importance to our culture through the reactions of the people of Metropolis and his friends and his family. And the reason that story was important to us and not an event, because we weren't event-driven in those days. That was just a story, and it became an event. And it triggered an era of event comic storytelling. But that original one was just really because we all cared about Superman enormously, each in our own way. Most of us grew up watching George Reeves on television, but all of us had a keen appreciation for who Superman was and where he fit in our national identity and in our human earthling identity. And we were all pretty darn proud of the work we'd been doing on the books, and we just we wanted people to appreciate him as we did. Mm-hmm. And so there's a little bit of an element of, we really miss him when he's gone, But what we found out was that even though people had not been reading the comic books for many years, that the entire world really wanted to know that Superman was still out there. They wanted to know that whatever sad fate befell the actors who portrayed him, that Superman himself, the ideal, the character that they loved growing up in whatever form it was, still existed, impervious to age, in the comic book somewhere. And when they learned that even that is not permanent, that anything can change, and that even the things we care most about will pass and change and maybe disappear, that seemed to wake the world up. And this most recognizable of characters, this most recognizable of corporate brands, suddenly was in the forefront of everybody's mind again for the first time in a long time, and people really, really cared about Superman, as they always had. They just weren't thinking about it. Yeah. So that was gratifying to us, but I think also it revitalized comics for a while, quite significantly. Superman was selling in the millions for the first time since the 1940s. But it also brought Superman back to mainstream consciousness in a way that caused people to sort of think about not just about Superman, but about cultural identity, our national identity, and what was happening to the legacy of the 20th century. That may be over-pontificating a bit, but this last weekend was kind of a weekend for pontificating about that kind of thing.
In '93, I was still in high school at the time. Of course, I'm pretty sure you've seen the Saturday Night Live sketch where, Chris Farley's all, they had him up in green, dressed up like the Hulk, and Mr. Fantastic, and just by the fact that they're parodying it, it's kind of shows the kind of cultural impact that it had, and then the all-black cover, so people didn't know what was on the inside, and impactful. I guess that's the best way I can put it. Being in high school at that age, I grew up, I was too young for Superman 1 because I think that was a year before I was born. But, growing up, and then, with my name being Christopher Reeves, he was such he was such a cultural icon that every time, that was like the first go-to, right after Christopher Columbus, people, Christopher Reeves, Superman. And I remember begging my mom to put the S curl in my hair. I have a Halloween outfit where, I dressed up like Superman. The funny thing was my mom tried to explain to her friend that she was getting me tights which, and for whatever reason, the woman that got the tights got the right color, but it had sparkles weaved into it. And,
sure.
and I'm like, Mom, I can't wear this. But, she had went and we went to another person, got what I was looking for. But, I identified very much with Superman, growing up, and what kid didn't tie a towel around their neck, go around the house. When the death happened, it was like large part of, modern mythology. I could only imagine the riots that would have started, centuries ago when they say, Zeus has died or any other godlike figure, without getting to the obvious ones. It shakes the world. It really does, especially being a self-professed geek, nerd, or whatever you want to call it. And like I said, definitely the black plastic, it was so it takes you aback a little bit.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think I had experiences very, very similar to yours, just one generation previous to that.
And
no, I was that guy too. I mean, my mother was not. My mother didn't actually encourage me so much as to get me tights or anything, but I did have some long pajamas with, I think, some sort of cowboy print on them or whatever, which I just chose to ignore. Some sort of white or off-white pajamas. Because I didn't know Superman was blue. I just knew him in black and white. I'm colorblind, and I was watching him on TV, so I thought he was, sort of like beige and red, basically. So I took a red towel and tied it around my neck and wore my PJs and made a crayon S and pinned it on and wore some underwear on the outside and ran around in my stocking feet all over the neighborhood and jumped off the neighbor's carport.
Wow. That you, what did you jump on top, or did you just land on your feet, or?
Well, it was a slanting roof, so it probably wasn't more than 6 feet off the ground, and then and we used to make these big piles of leaves, and I would, jump into the piles of leaves, and it took a while over the course of, I think, one fateful autumn to realize that willpower alone, no matter how red the towel was, I wasn't going to fly. Even so, I wore that outfit underneath my regular clothes to, well into second grade. I know. And I too crafted the S curl in my hair with a big gob of Vaseline.
Oh yeah,
I was Mr. Cool as a kid.
I had because my mom was the only person that could actually do it. If I tried, it would have been butchered. And so I had to beg her, whenever we were going out, Mom, please, put the curl. And so, she'd have to sit there, shellacking it to my head. Now, a super obvious question. Have you seen The Man of Steel? I mean, that's...
Actually, yes. I think we saw it 2 weeks ago. We actually saw it with Walter and Louise Simonson in New York.
Oh, wow.
So 2 weeks ago, yeah, right, cool. Good audience to see it with, right?
Now, I'm just curious because, I'm an aspiring writer. What was your process when it came to the working? Because I know you write and you also do art. Were they very detailed notes? Were they loose? Was it movie script? Was it, were there boxes with stick figures? I'm just curious on what usually that you worked with, or did it just vary up, or?
In the day-to-day, in the Superman days, currently, what you're talking about process, right?
Yeah. Like how?
So what period are we talking about? Because with technological advances, my process has probably changed somewhat since the Superman days.
Forgive me for not touching upon your work with Marvel. I'm a DC fanboy, and no, I hold no ill grudge towards Marvel. I obviously referring to more of the Man of Steel run where.
Oh, certainly. Well, I attribute the success of that era of Superman to a couple of things. Primarily to Mike Carlin, because I don't know if you know, but Mike used to be an associate editor at Marvel, where he worked on Fantastic Four, among other things, on Fantastic Four with Mark Grunwald. Mm-hmm. And if you follow his Facebook page, he occasionally posts pictures of himself and Mark back in the day. And boy, they looked like they were having fun. They looked like kids who had been comic fans in the Marvel age of comics, and now they were working at Marvel, and they were doing it Marvel style. And I experienced some of that with him when I did Fantastic Four vs. the X-Men. We got to know each other a little bit. He and Mark really sort of were the fulfillment of that legacy of what we thought it would be like to work in comic books when we were kids reading Stan's Soapbox. Remember how, in the Merry Marvel Marching Society, everything was Excelsior, and and it just seemed like the Marvel bullpen was a really fun place to be. Mm-hmm. That's really kind of the way it was. So when I broke into comics, Mike was working at Marvel, and it really still was kind of the tail end of the Marvel age at that point. And when Mike came over to DC to handle the Superman books, I really think that what he was trying to do was create a Marvel bullpen experience for DC, in that he wanted to bring that spirit of collaboration and that spirit of that energy of cooperation and innovation with him. And it was phenomenally ambitious because I don't know if you know about the Super Summits and how those books were written, but whereas Stan Lee might work with Jack Kirby on Fantastic Four and Steve Ditko on SpiderMan, and to whatever degree they collaborated with each other, that was an organic bottom-up experience that was driven by the art primarily. But Mike tried to do it not just with one artist and one writer. He tried to do it with all the writers of all four books, plus all the pencilers of all four books, plus all the inkers of all four books, plus the colorists for all four books, all co-plotting the adventure, the life of Superman all together in a big room during what was called the Super Summit. DC would fly everybody to a central location somewhere, lock us in a conference room somewhere, and we would hash out amongst us, with Mike Carlin vetting and organizing and conducting this four-ring circus, the course of events, the major arcs for Superman's life for the coming year. And it was sheer genius, brilliant madness, because there were so many bright and creative people on those teams, all of whom cared very deeply and passionately about what they were doing, all of whom, of course, had different perspectives. But Mike was able to surf that tsunami and always elicit from us storylines that made sense and were character driven and that were fun to read in sequence. So it was really was kind of like a mini Marvel age. In that the Marvel method, the vintage Marvel method that Stan and Jack used and that everyone used at Marvel in the old days, really was bottom-up creativity. It was collaboration in the purest sense, in that the writer and the artist worked together. First, we didn't work full script. That's the classic thing at DC, and now the standard thing throughout the industry, pretty much, is to work full script. A writer somewhere writes a script the way he would write a screenplay, with all the descriptions in it, and that is handed to an artist who draws it as exactly as he can. The Marvel method, as I'm sure many of your listeners know, is where the writer and the artist and the editor concoct a plot of what's going to occur in the comic book. The writer might write a short synopsis, page breakdown of what happens in the book, just to help pacing, and then it's up to the artist to really tell the story visually. And one of the rules there, one of the tests is you need to be able to follow the story from the pictures alone without words, to basically know what's going on just from the visual storytelling. And then when pages were drawn, then the writer would come back and have the very unusual task of putting words in the characters' mouths and actually writing the dialogue script from the artwork. So so the ball was really bounced between editor, writer, penciler, and back to writer in a way that produced a synergy, an organic form of collaboration that when you involve the right people, and of course Stan had Jack, and Mike Carlin had us, when you involve the right people, produces really good comics.
From your Strongman Kickstarter video, I see you working on a digital tablet. So has it been has it been an entire paradigm shift? Is it day and night from years ago? Is it?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I still prefer to work Marvel style. I still, I mean, I will occasionally work from full script, but generally speaking, I find full scripts to be kind of restrictive. I mean, very often an artist knows a better, simpler, more effective, stronger way to accomplish something in a story than a writer does, just because we think visually. So I generally still prefer to work Marvel style, which means that the basic process of creation is the same. On Strongman, Kal-El, Chris, and I figure out the plots together, and we brainstorm and cluster these plots in very rambunctious writer's room experiences. And from that, Chris or Kal-El will generate a synopsis, a page breakdown synopsis. And from that, I will draw the story. And sometimes I'll, suggest bits of dialogue in the panel borders or whatever, which they are free to either use or discard. But I'll draw the story from that plot, and then they will come back and apply the dialogue. And sometimes, if there's a key dialogue scene, they will include at least the gist of the dialogue in the plot, so I know what people are saying, or at least the information that's going to have to get across. And then that dialogue is refined or just used verbatim in the story. So the creative process is the same. There's thumbnailing the story from the plot, which I do on bits of scrap paper. And that's just wild, pure creation where I'm going inside my head and I'm just trying to solve all the picture problems for telling the story, and also just visualize it and live it in my imagination and find the best, most effective way to transfer the living experience going on in my head into visual, somewhat cinematic form on the page. And I generate a lot of these art scraps, which until recently I've always just discarded, which I kind of feel bad about now. But so they're always wonderful art scraps that I start with. And then, because sometimes in the thumbnail I'll get a gesture exactly right, and I'll want to try to preserve that, I will scan my thumbnail sketches and my art scraps and my construction drawings into the computer, and then on the Wacom tab, I will cut and paste and move and fidget and draw with the stylus, and until I've sort of pieced together a layout for the page where everything is in proper proportion and order, and everything fits together nicely like a puzzle, and adjustments have been made to help the story flow. And then when I have really a perfect layout in the computer, I'll print it off. Most of the time, I'll print it off, trace it off on a light box in pencil loosely, and then ink it. And these days, my pencils are probably too loose for any inker but me to ink. Because I just get down the essential information to trigger my perceptions. which probably isn't enough for any other inker these days. So I'll have those pencils. Sometimes I'll scan those pencils just to make sure that I stay on track. But most often I'll just go right in and ink it old school on the board like the olden days. But then I will scan in the inks, because all files are submitted digitally nowadays. So I'll scan in the inks, and then I'll work for a while on the Wacom tab to polish the inks, to make corrections, to tighten things up, to zoom in real small and do tiny details, and generally fix anything I didn't see in the fury of flopping ink all over the place. Then when I'm done with the inks, what I've been doing lately is printing the inks off in blue line and doing a wash layer for color. And because I'm colorblind, I'm just working with Payne's Gray and Sepia and adding warm tones and cool tones. But we want to have sort of an old-fashioned hand watercolored look to the book. So I do a tone layer in Sepia and Gray, which then when it's scanned in and laid beneath the inks can be futzed with in Photoshop to become color.
Wow.
And that process is kind of fun, but mostly I need to leave that to a colorist because I get the occasional green skin without meaning to, you know what I'm saying, an occasional blue, the occasional purple that should be blue, that sort of thing is where I run afoul. So with Strongman, I need to hire a real colorist, someone who really knows what they're doing. And I want to be able to pay them a proper, livable Marvel and DC level wage. I have indie comics friends I have one friend who's doing a book where he is penciling, inking, and doing tone wash for $75 a page. Now, $75 a page is what I got paid for pencils alone back in 1985. That was my starting rate at Marvel. And it was pretty rough to live on that back then. Mm-hmm. So I have a friend who's trying to live on $75 a page. You can do 3 pages a week that way if you work in full time. He can't afford to work full time. He has to wait tables as well. But he still works a good 8-12 hours a day on his comics. And it's not really, I mean, it's basically slave wages that he's getting. And I think that's true in a lot of places on smaller press jobs where productions are being done on such a shoestring that people can't actually afford to live. So with Strongman, we're really trying to set the bar at a place where our letterer, our colorist, anyone I pay to help with inking or backgrounds or something like that, where if we hire somebody, that we can pay them something that they can actually live on, and we can pay them the equivalent that they would get at Marvel and DC, and therefore we can also have good established talent working on it. So that's it's very important to me to see. I'm not okay underpaying myself a little bit because all I really care about is getting this thing done. And as long as we don't end up on the street, and as long as I can put a little food on the table, I'm happy. Just as until if we can survive long enough to get back to real paying work, it's worth it just to get Strongman done. But I can't underpay people that work for me. It's just it's a bad precedent to set. And I won't do it. So if we can't get the money that we're asking for, Strongman's just not going to happen because I'm not going to rip people off just so I can have my legacy projects out there.
It definitely makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this up because I don't want to overstay my welcome. I thank you very much for being so gracious. I have you on the air, and like I said, I'm usually not this stuttering. I usually don't stutter this much. Kind of in in awe. I'm basically kind of just tripping over my own tongue. So
I haven't noticed it. So if that may be in your own perceptions more than actually on the tape.
Okay.
I certainly feel like I've stuttered a lot, but I attribute that to ComicCon. And I apologize to any listeners if I've sort of stammered and tripped over my own tongue, because really, it's been a heck of a week, and we're leaving in a few hours to go to La Mole in Mexico City, and that's going to be another heck of a week. And so probably, even though I'm less than perfectly coherent now, it's best to catch me now. And I want to thank you for having me on. It's great to talk about the old Superman days. I'm super keen to talk about Strongman and to encourage people to get out there and pledge their support for this book so that we can make a really, really phenomenal comics reading experience for people, and pay the collaborators for what they're actually worth. So get out there, throw us what you can. The buy-in level is like $15 for the PDF. If you just to read it digitally, but there are all kinds of tiers, including you can get yourself or a loved one or a hated one actually in the comic, their likeness in the comic as an actual character. Wow. If you're a high roller. But there are all kinds of tiers in between. There's all kinds of original art giveaways and premiums, and as well as printed editions of both trade paperback and collectible hardback. There's all kinds of cool perks. So you can start at a really low level. Minimum bid is $1, and for our eternal thanks, to actually get the content is $15, and we're going to issue it in both English and Spanish digitally. We're going to print it in Spanish if we get enough money. That's a stretch goal. But there's all kinds of levels to get in on this. And also, since we're not just printing a run of comics that we've already published on the web, we'll actually be drawing the comics. In a way, we're sort of going to be drawing them to order. So our backers can have input. They can write to us, email us, be on the blog, talk about what they'd like to see, and we will listen. We will listen, and we will, if we can, serve any special requests that are possible to make, that we can possibly fit in. So we want you to feel like it's the Marvel Age of Comics again. We want you to feel like you're part of a club, part of a family, part of a secret society of Strongman fans who are part of the creative process of making this happen. So please give us what you can, and and also spread the word, because this is a numbers game for us. Mm-hmm. And thank you very much for the exposure.
Oh no, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm just a goof. Like I'm a goofy fan right about now. So once again, just letting everyone know, go to Kickstarter. Just so you can search for just Strongman. Go on Google. Just Google Strongman Kickstarter. Bring it right up to the page. We got 33 days to go right now. With ComicCon, it was a nice start. Let's keep the ball rolling. So I don't want to butcher the last name again. Jon Bogdanove. Bogdanove. Okay.
Yep.
Bogdanove. John, thank you very much for
That's
coming
okay,
on the show.
That's okay, either way.
I really appreciate it, being a fan, and thank you for coming on the show. And definitely, I don't know, is it bad luck to say good luck? I don't know. Is it like a break a leg? I don't know. I don't know if there's something in the industry.
I'll take all the luck. I don't know. I'll take luck in whatever form you want to send it over.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's the same as the theater. I don't know. Maybe you should say break an inking finger, break a nib. I don't know.
Break a nib, yeah.
Break a nib.
with all respect and love in my heart, break a nib. Thank you for coming on the show.
Chris, thank you very much. It's been, besides being, I hope, a good podcast, it's been fun talking to you.
Same here. Thank you very much. I've learned a lot. I'm inspired right now. I'm about to jump on the computer and hit up some more scripts or something like that. So thank you. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, here we go, man. Go ahead. You want to read
Double
it?
Jackpot.
What is it?
It is a self-published book by Christopher Cologne.
Chris Cologne? Smells good to me.
But
Look at her. That broke that fucking cold little exterior. He's like, hee.
But it is spelled Colon.
Him punny.
But Double Jackpot is a book about a comic book artist, Eric, who is in a loveless relationship with the materialistic
I feel you, Eric.
Lynette.
Oh, fucking. Are you sure I didn't write this? Sounds hauntingly familiar.
He starts cheating on his girlfriend with a more creatively supportive woman, Nadia.
Well, I gotta meet her. Where's the Nadia?
There's your summer girlfriend.
Summer Nadia is Nadia.
Nadia?
Yeah, I think Nadia spelled with an A.
All right.
Both Lynette and Nadia play the double jackpot, the largest payout in lotto history, much like the recent Powerball. Both girls play his birth date as the winning numbers. Eric is now stuck between two of the country's richest women. Who will he choose? It's not that simple. This is a clever fucking idea,
Yeah,
man.
it is.
Look at her. Fucking, she's impressed.
I am.
She got some summer reading. Christopher Cologne smells real lovely with an original idea. This is. I've never heard this before.
I haven't either. This is a self-published book, much in the indie spirit as Kev's Clerks.
Oh, you don't even need to name check me. This is just a good idea. You could stand on your own, man. You don't even have to be like, hey, remember Clerks? This is nothing like that. This is way more original than Clerks. This is a good idea, man. Why didn't I think of this?
I need something to read. This book is part of the Comic Books, Heavy Metal, Video Games Trilogy Book 2. Odd I See, A Tale from the Road, coming soon.
Right on, man. It's part of a trilogy. This is the first part.
Way to write, man.
He's seeking a literary agent. Motherfuckers, anybody out there? There ain't no literary agents listening to the show. I assure you, sure. But somebody know a literary agent? Hook a motherfucker up! Chris Cologne come up with an original idea. I should tell Raskin. That's a good fucking idea, to be honest with you. That's a fucking rom-com right there. Megan, get Raskin on the phone. Isn't it possible to get Raskin on the phone? No?
Yeah.
I want to run it past him, man. And if it happens, I get a taste, Chris Cologne. I get a whiff, if you will.
The book could also be ordered on www.lulu.com.
That's lulu.com.
I understand that. I just want to spell it out.
Normally one says it that spells it. Still, lulu.com. What is that? Do you know what it is?
I don't know. All right. The book could also be ordered on www.lulu.com. Search for Double Jackpot Christopher Cologne. A paperback version of the book is $15 and a PDF file is only $5.
$5 is
Yeah.
insanely inexpensive. 15's not even that bad for a paperback version.
No.
This is $1 million idea right here. Like a movie about a dude who fucking is stuck between two chicks, both of who play his birthday and win the lottery. Come on! I can see that trailer. Chris Cologne is on to something. Nobody else can smell it but me.
I'll read it.
Thank you. I'm going to make that smelly joke.
I know. You're trying to get me to laugh again.
It worked once. Double Jackpot is a self-published book by Chris Cologne, man. It's the first book in his Comic Books, Heavy Metal, Video Games trilogy. Book 2, Odd I See, A Tale from the Road, should be coming out soon. Get all the information at Chris Cologne, like a motherfucker.
I will
his
totally
book,
read this.
Double Jackpot. I'm serious. I'm going to recommend that to fucking Raskin. How is that not a movie? You know what I'm saying? This could be a sexy movie. You could do an R-rated version. There could be nudie in it, and you could show them fucking both chicks. Maybe a little penetration. Maybe a butthole shot. No butthole, no care.
I would like to formally apologize to Christopher Cologne right now.
No, sex sells. Chris Cologne will appreciate that. He's like, thanks for throwing a few buttholes in there, man.
Don't forget to check out twostrangersonepodcast.net, your one-stop resource for everything show-related. You can find links to subscribe to us on iTunes or on Stitcher. You could also find links to buy my book, Double Jackpot, on twostrangersonepodcast.net.
Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You're cool. And fuck you, I'm out.